Let me recognize Senator King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to compliment General you and the Secretary, but also the thousands of people that work with and for you for the logistics work that's going on with Ukraine. It's been an absolute marvel of logistics in terms of time, speed, accuracy. What has been accomplished is people will be writing books about this, and I want to please convey the thanks of this committee for that work. Following up, you mentioned one phrase I just picked up in your answer to Senator Fisher, lessons from Ukraine. Could you expand on that? What have we learned so far, both about the failures and the weaknesses of the Russian army, but also about the successes of the Ukrainians, and which systems have been most important, which have worked best? Tell me what we're learning thus far from what's going on.
I think we, a couple things. The plan that initially the Russians has was very complex, which takes highly trained, disciplined, and fit soldiers and units to execute. And as we saw, they did not have that capability. So when we talk about having quality soldiers, we think that's really important. They don't have the non-commissioned officer corps, the junior leaders that are used to taking mission command type orders and operating in a contested environment. You mentioned logistics. The old adage is that professionals study logistics and amateurs study tactics, because if you're going to prosecute a very complex mission like that, you have to have logistics. If you're going to do complex operations like airborne operations, air assault operations, or amphibious operations, those are very, very complex to undertake, and we can look at other parts of the world where they may be required, and you can take a look at some of the systems, the appropriate air and missile defense systems that the Secretary mentioned, and one of the other systems we're developing, which is a mid-range capability that allows you to sink ships, and we saw that happen with the Ukrainians. All those tools come together to give you some of the things you need. And I just add on the Ukrainian side, leadership matters. You see it at the top. The Prime Minister stayed there and led his troops, if you will. All the able-bodied people stayed to defend their country. They have the capability, probably not as much. They have the capacity, probably not as Russia, but they got this thing called will. And I talk about building cohesive teams. That's what it's about. That is the difference that's happening in Ukraine, which is different than some of the other places we've seen.
I think that's a good list, and I'm sure that list will grow as time goes on. It's an extraordinary opportunity to see what is actually occurring. I think you're right. I remember asking several months before the invasion, was Zelensky, Ghani, or Churchill? And he certainly has turned out to be closer to Churchill, and I think that has made an enormous difference. Secretary Wormuth, on an entirely separate issue, I work with a lot of veterans in Maine, and one of the problems that we have that keeps coming up is the weakness of the transition from active duty to veteran status, the handoff from the Defense Department to the VA. I believe, I don't have the data in front of me, but that many of the veteran suicides take place in that relatively short period of time between active duty and civilian status. I believe that you should put as much resources, time, and effort and people into transition out as you do into recruiting in. Can you address that problem? Because from everything I've learned on the ground in Maine, this is a serious issue.
Certainly, Senator. And yes, I think there is data that shows that transition out of the service back into the civilian community can be a critical time. We do try to work very closely with the Department of Veterans Affairs to ensure that there is a warm handoff. And with the transition programs that we have for folks getting out of the Army, we try to make sure that they have the resources to know what to expect, to be able to sort of link them to employment resources and things like that. But I think that is something that we can continue to work on. And frankly, I've heard some folks say, the transition programs help me learn how to tie a tie. and to, do a resume, but psychologically making the adjustment to sort of going back into the civilian world isn't something that I've heard sometimes people say that they get as much emphasis on. So I think that's an area we could work on.
I hope you will, and I hope you'll not only commit to working on it, but work on it in a systematic way, perhaps appoint a task force or some group whose responsibility it is to talk about and think about and work on this problem, because this is, as you know, we have an epidemic of veteran suicide and suicide in the military. This is one place where I think we could make a difference. So thank you very much, and I hope you will follow up in an urgent way on this problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator King. Senator